The Northtown News Magazine is brought to you in part by eVoter. eVoter is proud to be a sponsor of the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson, and welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson, and welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
For the identity of the real Marty Levinson, please stay tuned to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi there, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine with the greatest cameraman around, Sonny Hirsch, and your host, Avi Myers.
Thank you, Marty. Although it's pretty obvious I haven't seen Marty in several years, and I'm going to need to get my lawnmower out in order to get my hair cut. You know what? This is our post-election. We're going to sort of run down the election. Before I introduce my guest, some of the things you guys don't see are a lot of the people who come here actually bring me like little perks and gifts. Some of my favorite, by the way, people bring six-packs. That's appreciated. If you ever do, I'll be happy to give you the brand. I am semi-bribable. You won't get an endorsement out of me for it, but you'll get my thanks, and you'll get to have one of the beers too if you like. Probably the two coolest things. Well, actually, you know what? Mariana Spiropoulos brought me a very interesting book about the Jews of Greece during the Holocaust that I've been reading, and it was very educational, and thank you very much. What I got from John Garrido, who I did vote for, is this badge. It is actually a real Chicago Police Department badge.
Wow.
Okay, feel it. I mean, it's metal.
Yeah, that's the real deal.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's only available to people who are actually police officers. His rank is lieutenant, so he could get me a lieutenant badge. If he was a captain, he could got me a gold captain's badge or whatever. But you know what? It's not going to really say Chicago Police because they don't want me to rob anybody. So this thing has, actually it says Israel here if you can read, and it's got an Israeli flag, and he brought that obviously because I'm Jewish, okay? And, but my favorite, and this was great, and I'll be wearing this on Purim. My favorite gift of all, though, and unfortunately another losing candidate and somebody I voted for and endorsed, but this is somebody I was going to vote for and endorse anyway, for what a reclamation district is Maureen Kelly, and actually her husband Jack, who's, and I really hope they try it a second time because she's the director of intergovernmental relations at St. Xavier University. She's a very intelligent person, and she would have made a major contribution in politics. And I hope she tries again in a more favorable situation. But I love Facebook. I checked her out on Facebook, before the interview, and I ran into her at Terry O'Brien thing the night before. I saw she was a fan of Maywood Park, and so when I saw her at Terry Brown's fundraiser with their husband, I said, what's with being a fan of Maywood Park? She goes, my husband works here. And we started talking. He's a longtime executive there. And they came the next day for the show, and he brought me, this is a harness racing whip. I mean, this is what they really use on the horses. And by the way, before you animal cruelty guys start talking, or whatever, the way it works in harness racing, if you take a look, is it's a sulky with a metal shaft. And what they actually do is they usually hit the shaft and make a noise, or show the whip end to the horse and kind of wave it to get his attention. They very rarely hit the horse. If they do, it's on the saddle pad. If a driver were to actually put the reins in one hand, take the whip and rear back and hit the horse, that is a 1-week suspension. I mean, there is a lot of sensitivity toward animals, and there's even some talk about taking the whip out of the game. But anyway, this was a great present. Thank you. I have no practical use for it whatsoever, so I want to show you it on the show. But it's absolutely, I love this, and thank you so much, guys. And yeah, that one definitely earned some admiration. But I was going to endorse her anyway, so I'm not going to feel guilty about it.
You ought to put that on Facebook.
Oh, and by the way, she well, whatever. Maybe.
Kinky women.
We're on the air, Sonny.
Don't ruin my image, Sonny.
Anyway, we're really here to talk about the election.
Although being on this show, it's probably already going down.
Right. Well, being on the air has probably definitely ruined this guy's image. But you know what? He's somebody we've had on several times, and not often enough. I'd really like to get this guy on the show a lot more often. He is the city editor of the Evanston Review. He likes to point out himself that he does more reporting than anything else, although he does handle a number of editor-type jobs. Bruce Chlorophene, who was the copy editor of Jewish Chicago, which, by the way, thank you so much. It was a tremendous success. There are so few copies that were left that weren't picked up. I mean, I put out over 15,000 copies, and they were gone almost everywhere, and they were gone early. It was terrific. I used a guy named Bruce Chlorophene, who was the former editor of the Evanston Review, and a really terrific journalist. And thank you so much for all the help, Bruce. And it was really great. And somebody who works for that very same paper. And by the way, Bruce Chlorophene told me that the best thing about the Evanston Review, right now, to this day, is Bob Seidenebrg. And for that alone, he would.
Bruce said that.
Bruce said that. Yes.
He must owe me money or something.
But anyway, my next guest is not Bruce Chlorophene. It's the city editor of the Evanston Review, ace reporter, somebody who covers this guy covers like about 47 different beats, literally. Okay, Bob Seidenebrg. Bob, how you doing?
A pleasure, Avi. A pleasure to be on the show.
First of all, my pleasure.
I read your political commentary.
Oh, okay.
And
thank you. Nobody
could say you're not interesting. They may have other accusations, but I'll tell you something, you're a must-read.
Oh, thank you very much. As a matter of fact, at this point, I already hope I've got my blog going, which I wanted to have going before the election. But thank God the paper kept me so busy, and it was I had so many ads. I wrote 14,000 words in that paper, and I basically did it in 2 days. I mean, it was 2 very long days. And I want to tell you, without a guy like Bruce, it would have been almost impossible to have done the job we did. And I've had virtually no clarifications or corrections on subjects.
Did you do it the Hunter Thompson way, where he had that bottle of wild turkey by him, and he had that electric typewriter IBM going?
Well, actually, it was no. You know what? Actually, there was a bottle of bourbon that wasn't that far away. Okay, that was occasionally touched, along with a beer or two, but not constantly. The fact is, when I started writing, the funny thing is, the second day I wrote, which was a Saturday night, I basically started about 11 o'clock at night because I had other things to take care of. It's like putting on a million different hats, because basically I laid out the paper, I created a lot of the ads, and designed ads for people. I basically, Sonny, so a lot of the pictures, 6 of the 10 pictures on the cover from the TV show that Sonny actually took from Adobe Premiere Pro by picture capturing on the air, which is a really cool program. And but anyway, I started at 11 o'clock. By a little over after 7 that morning, and Bruce is an early morning person, so yes. I was feeding him stuff all the way. I wrote 9,500 words in those 8 hours, which is an all-time record for me. I mean, actually, you know what? Usually 9,500 words would have been a 2-day job. But I guess I did 58 different political interviews on the air before the election.
Right.
And, it really got me prepped. And one of the things you guys don't see is how much we talk about off the air, because not everybody wants everything on the air, so you get to learn a lot that way, too. So it was really interesting. Remember, it was funny, because out of the polling place, there was one rabbi I know who told me afterwards, it's like, any idea what you're doing? And I know he reads the paper. So anyway, it was kind of cool.
Well, it's actually interesting that you do that amount of reporting and in-depth interviewing. You don't see that as much anymore, because reporters, it's very difficult to be specialists. We used to have a political reporter at Pioneer Press. Now everyone is kind of, dashing around. They've got to get stuff on the web. You're more spread out because of resources. So I think that, and I'm not telling you this, but other people who do that are really filling a niche if you want to get in-depth kind of information, and we all kind of depend on it. We surf and look and we pick and choose what people are saying, and it helps. It comes into our kind of total network of information. So it's an interesting, aspect of journalism right now.
Yeah, unfortunately, because of the situation with the daily papers and even the community papers, I remember when Lerner had a full-time political reporter. Unfortunately, it was Greg Hines, who was very inaccurate at the time.
Didn't he once write a feature story on you, a very glowing feature?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Greg Hines, and by the way, and the interesting thing is it actually was a big help to me. And I still have the article downstairs, 2 of them. He basically talked about the best political. First, he talked about the 3 biggest political tricksters in the '91 aldermanic election, and he called me one of the 3. And actually, that was a real compliment. And then he really said that I should win the prize. But then in his year-end stuff at the end of the year, he even gave me a higher honor of being a real dirty political type. The funny thing is that his base facts were wrong. I was not then, never have been, although I've been friendly with different people, a member of the 50th Ward political organization. And as a matter of fact, that election was the very first time I ever voted for Bernie Stone. Well, actually, you know what? I might have voted for him. No, actually, I'm not sure I did. But I actually worked against him on at least 2 or 3 separate occasions. So he was definitely wrong about all that, but you know what? It made people think I was a lot more powerful than I am. That Lerner was ripping me apart on their front page, and that was wonderful.
Well, what do they say? No news is there, any news
Well,
is good news?
Yeah, as long as they spell your name right, and he did. I'll give Greg that. But Greg, unfortunately, in those days, and I don't know if it's true now because I won't read him at all, basically wrote with his sexuality. In the
Excuse me?
Greg is openly gay. And that year, Lerner paper in the endorsement, in the endorsements of a local neighborhood newspaper, in the November elections and in the primaries afterwards, of the 39 or 40 stories, endorsements that he wrote, okay, all but one mentioned the word HIV, AIDS, or lesbians, okay, or gay. And that was a factor in now in a neighborhood newspaper, especially on a city level. We're not talking on an. How is that an important issue to depend on your endorsements? And the reason, by the way, Greg Hines went so hard against me, which is fine because it really did help me in the long run, is because that Hank Rubin was for benefits for gay couples, and at the time Bernie Stone wasn't. Bernie Stone votes for it now. But it was really simple. Hank Rubin was the guy who was more pro-gay than Bernie Stone. Bernie's very ecumenical about it these days, but that is very simply the reason that Greg went against me. So tell me, let's talk about, what was your take on the election?
Well, I was going to say...
Oh, please. Whatever you want to say.
Well, let me go on a different entry point.
Sure.
Actually, your name came up in the primary election. Covering a race on that Tuesday night, and Larry Suffredin swept in the room. Larry had just won the 13th district, Cook County Commission race, and we started talking about the judicial races, which unfortunately, again, that's another area that newspapers really aren't covering in the kind of depth, and there really is no one. Aside from people like yourself who are looking at those kind of races in more than a superficial way, and people really depend on the judicial rating systems. I mean, that's basically what newspapers do. They print the judicial rating systems because they don't. And there's another reason, they don't really want to get enmeshed in that. They don't feel like they have the resources to really examine these people's credentials and everything. So he brought up the fact that an Evanston resident and former alderman Steve Bernstein won in the ninth judicial subcircuit, and that he and you had some dialogue or debate about rating systems and how you do evaluate candidates. And I know in Jewish Chicago, I think you came out and Bernstein was not one of your selections. And
Slammed him.
And you based it on heavily on the evaluations.
7 of the 11 rating organizations for the bar found him not qualified.
Now, it brings an interesting thing because I know that they weigh heavily on candidates' litigation abilities.
Right.
Am I correct?
Litigation experience.
And Larry, I know, had a little difference with you, and certainly I even wrote this in the Evanston Review.
Well, Larry was one of Bernstein's supporters, but they've been friends for 33 years.
Okay, that aside, but in the review, what I wrote, and I know you differ with me on this, is that as a longtime City Hall reporter covering Evanston City Council, too long, I don't really know. Longer than some of the episodes.
He's 87 years old. He's been doing it for 65 years.
Hold on, my microphone came off.
Okay, but anyway, the fact of the matter is that Bernstein was ruled not qualified by 7 of the 11 bar associations. Not all the major bar associations found him not qualified. Anybody that does any real inquiry into this found him not qualified.
Okay, well, I'm not really focusing on that as much, but and you and I we talked about this. I covered Steve as an alderman for more than a decade.
Yeah.
and saw him in kind of a more mediator role on the council, he had kind of the knowledge of out in the community, working with juveniles. He just seemed to have a wide expanse of information and experience that I thought would really would make him a good judge. That he had that kind of temperament to be a good judge, and I wasn't weighing the litigation factor. And I think that Larry Suffredin was kind of arguing that at primary night with me, that he felt there's too much emphasis on kind of the litigant experience. In fact, he'd like to see the different associations take another look at that.
Well, actually, what? Part of it is because Larry also endorsed him and he wants to look good about it.
I guess I'm not going to get invited back on this show, am I?
Of course you're going to be invited back, and that's fine. The fact of the matter is I find it so interesting that all these progressives, or I like to call them regressives, actually, talk about the finest possible candidates. Yet in the 49th Ward, you had David Fagus, and you had Joe Moore for Steve Bernstein, who was found not qualified by the major bar associations and almost all the minor ones. In Evanston, you had Jeff Schoenberg, who, by the way, my pet name, I came across the name, I thought, I saw somebody who called Evanston the People's Socialist Republic of Evanston.
Oh, that actually has been People's Republic of Evanston.
Yeah, the People's Socialist Republic. I thought that was funny. So if that were to be a real phrase, then Jeff Schoenberg is the commissar of the Politburo.
A lot of times, though, I will say that comes more from kind of aggrieved Republican candidates who, when they go up against the so-called Evanston machine, the Democratic machine.
There is a machine in Evanston. People don't realize that these independents and progressives have a political machine.
And they deliver like 80%, vote based on progressive platforms. Now, I should tell you, that machine in a race I just covered in Evanston, the 18th District State Representative race, the seat that Julie Hamos currently holds, or is, for a little bit now.
Well, actually, for almost a year, because their primary's so early.
Yeah, it's a good point. Now, that race, the machine was split all over the place, because you had 5 people, going for her seat. And you had these different constituencies and special interests having to decide which candidate now should we put our support and our backing on. And so you kind of saw different aspects of, again, the so-called machine at work, and it was interesting. It really was
interesting, but the truth is she had the most powerful politician in this area. I call her North Shore political boss, Jan Schakowsky. Jan Schakowsky is the single people.
I didn't say that. Let's make sure I have to cover the same. Jan, I didn't say that.
Chicago. She runs virtually all the ward organizations. Okay, not just the ward organizations. I mean, she's got a big say in 49. She basically, she'll tell Evanston and Niles and Skokie and all these places, among others. I don't have the whole list. She basically controls just about every single political organization in her congressional district. She's got the robocalls from her husband, who of course she doesn't like to mention is a convicted felon, a very intelligent guy, by the way, and our superior politician. And she herself, she is, anybody who thinks that progressives aren't real politicians, I mean, they could, right after this election with Tony Preckwinkle, I think the progressives, or regressives, whatever you want to call them, could teach the regular organization how to do things.
Well, wait, isn't that politics? I mean, are they doing it?
Politics,
I mean,
right.
they're playing the same game, and they want to extend their agenda, and so why hold that against them? Are you saying there's some hypocrisy there?
Yes.
Okay. See, us reporters, we can play that double-edged sword.
Right. The fact is, he's 100% correct. It's not that they're not entitled to do it, because that's the way the game is played. But the thing is, they're saying we're better.
Okay.
Okay. And you know what? When you say you're better and you play the same dirty game, first, you know what? One of the really interesting things I learned recently, unfortunately I found out about it after the election, is that there was a butcher shop on Devon, or is a butcher shop, that had one of these gigantic Preckwinkle signs. There's a guy Singh on a carpet place on the 2300 block of Devon who had 35,000 Preckwinkle signs printed. 35,000, including these big, gigantic ones that were all over the place. And one of the signs was in the butcher shop that was owned by this guy who's under indictment right now in Mumbai in India. And what he's under indictment for is he's one of the participants in the terrorist actions that have been there. So you actually had a terrorist, a progressive terrorist, on Devani Avenue with the huge Prequickle sign in the window, which I found absolutely fascinating. I mean, you know what? They don't walk on water. They sink just like everybody else. And yeah, it's them saying they're better. I got to tell you, the Ninth Sub-Circuit thing really... Gary Cole, who actually beat Abby Fishman-Romanek, who had ethical problems, but she was on all the palm cards of the DPOE, even though Gary Cole was told, as a matter of fact, people were told, period, that there wasn't going to be a favored choice. The DPOE both like Gary Cole and they like Abby Fishman-Romanek. Okay, yet Cole got stabbed in the back, didn't expect it. It's a good thing he had good bar ratings and all the rest of it, because some people paid attention. Although, you know what's interesting to me is that Evanston City Council, 8 of the 9 aldermen and the mayor all back Gary Cole, despite the political backing of North Shore political boss Jan Schakowsky, as well as the DPOE. Oh, and by the way, not to mention the 49th Ward political organization and Michael Kreloff. That's another one, another progressive who doesn't matter if they're not qualified or whatever else, or they have ethical problems. He'll endorse them, no problem, if he's one of theirs.
Well, you know, again, I think that kind of goes in concert with you know, power and wanting to extend your reach and I mean, Jan and I think for a while, I think her husband Robert Creamer and some other people were actually you know, running almost a school for progressives, you know, to you know, how to develop campaigns, et cetera, that.
And they're effective.
It's interesting, though. I mean, you do look at the effect of someone like that and how far it will extend. For instance, we were looking at Julie Hamos's attempt to move, you know, into the 10th district. When she didn't live there, she had to move and take on, you know, Dan Seals, who was, you know.
By the way, does he actually live in the 10th district himself?
I think he lives actually a block outside of it, and it's not. It's surprising. It's not that big of an issue there. I mean, I don't think that was a key issue in the race at all.
Yeah.
But I think that probably Jan had to be sensitive because as far as how big of a role she played there, because you know there's kind of a more conservative sector of the 10th as you get up to, you know, Highland Park.
Oh, definitely.
That you know could have affected Julie's chances and may have in such a, you know, narrow, just a razor thin, you know, race.
That race was like less than about 1,000 votes.
It's right.
Like that.
It's right. But then if you swing back to Evanston, you know, the candidate that Jan backed, Robin Gable,
Yeah.
you know, who ran has been very effective, very active in you know, health access for women and children. She won in a very tough 5-way race, and you know, I think that Jan's backing was definitely a factor. You know, Larry Suffren backed one of the younger candidates, so yeah, I mean, it does. There's definitely an effect. It does shape politics, and it is a philosophical question. I think you've decided as to good or bad.
Well, you know what? They're entitled. Believe me, they're entitled to.
I mean, Bernie Stone. Yeah. I mean, he certainly is. He wouldn't get involved in that kind of way, and you know.
Well, but one thing about Bernie Stone, he definitely definitely knows how to play the game politically. And you know what? When I interviewed Jan Schakowsky last time, and I basically we talked about this on the air, and I actually used Eleanor Cliff's statement. She's from the Mulgothin group. She called politics a blood sport, and I just watched it the week before I interviewed Jan. Mm-hmm. And I asked her point blank, you know, she said politics a blood. She knows it's a blood sport. It is a blood sport, but the fact of the matter is, the only difference is that you don't claim a higher moral ground. You know, if you're busy stabbing people in the back, and I'm not saying that Jan specifically is doing this, although I know she has done it, stabbing people in the back or lying to their face. One thing about Bernie, he's never stabbed in the back. He's never lied to people's faces. He punches you right in the face. And the knife goes right into your intersection, face to face.
Where's that whip right now?
Get him, boy. Get him. Get him. But no, Bernie. Hey, Bernie. I have been on the receiving end of Bernie's blows. Okay, and he's got a serious punch even at his age.
You know, back though to Evanston and that area and the North Shore's image in that sense, since you're based in Chicago, but you cover that whole area. But just from my perspective, it's
and he is the expert.
It is interesting because I'm probably not objective. I've covered the community that's so progressive for so many years that you do tend to get absorbed into it to some degree. But it also alerts you, and it did in a couple of races, as to where the progressives are going to go in an election. Preckwinkle was a very, very good example of that. The DPOE, the People's, who represents the People's Republic of Evanston, or whatever, in your words. And
My
a lot
words,
of,
not his.
Well, actually, other people have brought that up, and Democrats are not so serious. Sometimes they can, joke about that. At this point, they do get it serious. But DPOE endorsed Preckwinkle by a real strong amount. And you could just kind of feel early on, the progressive movement, whatever, think of it, building around her. Especially at a point where, it was difficult to see, which candidate was going to be able to get that kind of, support. Much earlier on, Evanston was the second community to come out in support of a candidate named Barack Obama in the U.S. Senate race in 2000. And that was a surprise. Now, there were some candidates that had some problems. And one guy running that race was Dan Hines. So, so there is it does kind of signal to you where things are going, at least as Evanston tries to shape the world, and that may not be a good thing in some people's minds.
Well, there's no question Evanston has a major impact. And one thing about, there's a lot of intelligent people in Evanston, there's no question about it. And
did you hear that, everyone?
No. Listen, you can be dead wrong. You can be the smartest guy in the world and be dead wrong. I got a friend who's in Mensa who I disagree with about everything.
And that's not me. Let's just say that for the record.
You just never took the test. But in any event, no. It's you know what. What part of what makes the world interesting is the view is all the different views. And Evanston definitely is. At one time, Evanston was a highly conservative Republican city.
It is. It's amazing.
Prohibition came out of Evanston.
It really in
the Women's
50s.
Christian Temperance Union.
That's right. And boy, they know how to throw a wild party.
and you couldn't even buy liquor in Evanston till actually not that long ago.
No, there was a time when you really had to bring your own if you went into their restaurants, and
there weren't even liquor stores.
You're right. You had to go to Howard Street.
Well, Howard Street had more bars per square inch than any place in the city because nobody could drink in Evanston.
That's right.
So no, Evanston's a very different. So you know what? We've got about a minute and a half left.
Wow.
Couple of basics. I mean, Evanston. How many people are in Evanston?
70,000 plus, and it's I think it's something like the 8th largest city in Illinois. People don't realize that sometimes.
And that's not to mention the university crowd.
The university gives a really special aspect to, brings a really special element to Evanston. I mean, I think it adds a lot to its liveliness. Of course, there's always a tension with the city because of its tax-exempt status and feeling that it could be doing more, especially in these tough budget times.
Right, and by the way, we want to wish Steve Bartleball a lot of luck with his problems with Evanston right now. We also hope Rabbi Dov Hillel Klein had a very successful banquet with the Tannenbaum Chabad House, and we want to wish him all the best with his endeavors there. And in the meantime, we're really at wrap-up time. So, boy, the time just flew by, and that's why I want to have you on more often, because it's always interesting, and I talked way too much.
And I have no idea if I'll be allowed back in Evanston after this interview.
But just remember, all these viewpoints are mine, and I didn't really, trust me, afterwards, I haven't sucked them into anything. But we're talking about the city of the Evanston Review, ace reporter for 14,237 different beats, Bob Seidenebrg. Pleasure having you.
Same here, Avi.
And I want to thank my entire technical crew, Sonny Hirsch. Join us on the web, www.ntnm.org, caps24.org, Community Policing World, big on it. Thanks, everybody, for being here, and watch us next week.
Thank you. Thank you, Avi.